Chapter 1 of The Face in the Abyss by A. Merritt. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Ben Tucker. Chapter 1. Out of the Haunted Hills. It has been just 3 years since I met Nicholas Graydon in the little Andean village of Chupan, high on the eastern slopes of the Peruvian uplands. I had stopped there to renew my supplies, expecting to stay not more than a day or two. But after my arrieros had unlimbered my luggage from the 2 burros, and I entered the unusually clean and commodious posada, its keeper told me that another North American was stopping there. He would be very glad to see me, said the innkeeper, since he was very ill and there was no other Americanos in the hamlet. Yes, he was so ill that he was, to tell me all the truth, certain to die, and it would beyond doubt comfort him much to have a fellow countryman with him when that sad moment came. That is, he added, if he were able to recognize a fellow countryman, since all the time the signor had been at the posada he had been out of his mind with fever, and would probably pass away so. Then, with a curiously intense anxiety, he implored me to stay on until death did come, a matter, he assured me, that could be one of only a few days, maybe hours. I bluntly asked him whether his desire for me to remain was through solicitude for my ailing countryman, or through fear for himself, and after a little hesitation he answered that it was both. The signor had come to the village a week before, with 1 burro and neither guides nor arrieros. He had been very weak, as though from privations and long journeying, but weaker far from a wound on his neck which had become badly infected. The wound seemed to have been made by either an arrow or a spear. The signor had been taken care of as well as the limited knowledge of the cura and himself permitted. His burro had been looked after and his saddlebags kept scrupulously closed. But I could understand that questions might be raised after the signor's death. If I remained, I could report to the authorities that everything possible had been done for the signor's comfort, and testify that none in Chupan was responsible for his injuries. This did not sound very convincing to me, and I said so. Then the worthy innkeeper revealed what actually was in his mind. The signor, he said, had spoken in his ravings of dreadful things, things both accursed and devilish. What were they? Well, he crossed himself, if I remained I would no doubt hear for myself, but they had even greatly disturbed the good cura, despite that he was under the direct protection of God. The signor had come, so his ravings indicated, from a haunted place, no less a place, the innkeeper whispered, crossing himself again, than the shunned Cordillera de Carabaya, which everyone knew was filled with evil spirits. Yes, evil spirits, which would not lightly give up anyone who had once been in their power. And, in fine, the idea seemed to be that some of these demons of the Cordillera, about which as a matter of fact I had heard some strange tales, might come at any time for the sick man. If they did, they would be more apt to wreak their fury on one of the signor's own countrymen, especially if he was in the same room. The keeper of the posada did not put it that way, of course. He said that one of his own people was better qualified to protect the signor, in such case that any strangers were. Nevertheless, the theory plainly was that if I stayed I would act as a lightning rod for any leaven of hell that might strike. I went to the room of the sick man. At first glance I could see that here was no Andean, no mountain vagabond. Neither fever nor scrub beard could hide the fineness, the sensitivity, the intelligence of the face on which I looked. He was, I judged, about 30, and he was in ill case indeed. His temperature showed 105.6. At the moment he was in delirium. My first shock of surprise came when I examined his wound. It seemed to me more like the stab of some great bird beak than the work of spear or arrow. It was a puncture, or better, perhaps, a punch, clear through the muscles of the back and left shoulder and base of the neck. It had missed the arteries of the last by the narrowest of margins. I knew of no bird which could make such a wound as this, yet the closer I looked and probed, the more sure I was that it had been inflicted by no weapon of man. That night, after I had arranged my own matters and had him sleeping under a hypodermic, I opened up his saddlebags. Papers in them showed his name to be Nicholas Graydon, a mining engineer, a graduate of the Harvard School of Mines, his birthplace, Philadelphia. There was a diary that revealed so much of him truly likable that had I not already made up my mind to stop on with him, it would have impelled me to do so. Its last entry was about a month before, and ran, 2 weeks now since our arrieros deserted us, and we seemed to be pretty thoroughly lost. Effects upon the three are curious. Sterrett manages to keep himself evenly drunk all the time. That spare burrow of his must be loaded with nothing but that Indian hell-brew. Donker is moody and sullen. Soames seems to have developed a morbid suspicion of all of us. Strange how the wilderness, the jungle, the desert, bring out the latent man in all of us. In Quito, none of the three was half bad, but now, well, the luckiest thing for me will be for us to find no treasure. If we do, my throat will probably be the first to be cut. Further down in the bag were 2 parcels, each most carefully and securely wrapped. Opening the first, I found a long black feather, oddly marked with white. I did not recognize the plume as belonging to any bird I knew. Its shaft was inlaid with little bands of gold, altogether a curiously delicate bit of goldsmith's work. But the contents of the second package made me gasp with amazement. It was a golden bracelet, clearly exceedingly ancient, the band an inch broad and expanding into an oval disc perhaps 3 inches long by 2 wide. That disc held in high relief the most extraordinary bit of carving I had ever seen. 4 monsters held on uplifted paws a bowl on which lay coiled a serpent with a woman's face and a woman's breasts. Nor had I ever beheld such suggestion of united wisdom and weirdness as the maker had stamped upon the snake-woman's face. Yet it was not that which called forth the full measure of my wonder. No, there are certain pictures, certain sculptures, certain works of art which carry to their beholders conviction that no fantasy, no imagination went into their making, and that they are careful, accurate copies of something seen by those who made them. This bit of golden carving carried that conviction. The 4 monsters which held up the snake woman were dinosaurs. There was no mistaking them. I had examined too many of the reconstructions made by scientists from the fossil bones of these gigantic, monstrous reptilian creatures to be in error. But these giants were supposed to have died off millions of years before man first appeared on Earth. Yet here they were, carved with such fidelity to detail, such impress of photographic accuracy, that it was impossible to believe that the ancient goldsmith who made this thing had not had before him living models. Marveling, I held the bracelet closer to the light, and as I did so, I thought I heard far away in the blackness of the mountains and high in the air a sound like a tiny bugle. In that note was something profoundly, alienly weird. I went to the window and listened, but the sound did not come again. I turned to find the eyes of Graydon opened and regarding me. For a moment he had slipped from the thrall of the fever, and the thought came to me that it had been that elfin bugling which had awakened him. It was 6 weeks before I had Graydon well out of danger, and in that time he had told me bit by bit that well-nigh incredible experience of his in the haunted hills of the Cordillera de Carabaya, and what it was that had sent him so far down into the Valley of the Shadow. 3 years it has been since then. 3 years, and I have heard nothing of him. 3 years, and he has not returned from his journey back to the Cordillera de Carabaya, where he went to seek mystery, ancient beyond all memory of man he believed was hidden there. But more than that, to seek Suarra. If you don't hear from me in 3 years, tell the story, and let the people who knew me know what became of me, he said, as I left him at the beginning of that strange trail he had determined to retrace. And so I tell it, reconstructing it from his reticences as well as his confidences, since only so may a full measure of judgment of that story be gained. End of Chapter 1.